Are you thinking of buying a car this weekend? What if you realize that the car that you bought might have been flood damaged? And think about this. You turn on the key to ignition, then you go to a repair shop. And the repair expert will tell you, yeah, when did you first buy this car? Tell him a year, so and so, and then he starts telling you that this was flooded. It should have been working. You're about to see some cars that have been flooded during some raging floods. So what can you do next time you buy a flooded car? Here's Lisa Guerrero.
The historic storms that swept across the USA this year left houses and cars underwater. Actually, thousands of cars washed away and flooded. This is one of those vehicles caught up in Hurricane Ida in this South Orange, New Jersey parking lot in September. And we're about to open its doors for the first time since the storm. Let's check it out.
Oh my God.
That's so gross. There's mold everywhere. This is pretty gross.
Yeah, it is.
Undrivable.
Undrivable, won't start, should just be junk for parts.
Junk indeed. And yet, experts warn after every major flood, thousands of vehicles like this one are cleaned up and resold to unsuspecting buyers. That's what Joyce Darden says happened to her used car. She says she bought it from Enterprise Car Sales for $17,000. Now every morning the 80-year-old suits up. No, it has nothing to do with COVID. Joyce says her car is actually making her sick. Houston auto appraiser Roy Bent inspected the car, and within minutes, he spotted what he says is proof of mold and water damage.
That's rust.
Wow.
That's a lot of rust. That is a telltale sign that the vehicle has been involved in a flood.
He says another dead giveaway, it's a flood car.
Seeing sand in your engine, you should not have any sand in here. Do you see that?
Yeah.
He says the car's electrical components are also compromised, including the airbag. Joyce says her doctors believe her headaches, earaches, and sinus infection were triggered by severe mold exposure.
Every time she jumps in here and steps on the floor and runs the AC, she's just breathing it.
Mold expert Hansel O'Halloran says he found extreme levels of toxic mold in the carpets of her vehicle.
This should never happen to anybody.
Experts say there are nearly 400,000 flood-damaged vehicles on the road today.
Enterprise tells us there was no record of water damage to the car before they sold it and that they stand by the sale. They also say they offered to inspect the car and buy it back. And how can you tell if you've got a flood car? Well, come to our website, InsideEdition.com, for some tips on that.
And we're going to tell you those tips right now. Just give me 1 second here. So how can you tell if you have a flood car in your car? Here are 10 ways from How Stuff Works. Here are 10 ways to spot a flood damaged car. Remember, if it's electric, because water and electricity don't mix. Here are 10 ways to spot a flood damaged car. I'm gonna try to bring this out wide. Okay, there we go. Good. Alright. Be a smart shopper. Talk to a reputable dealer. A lot of time dealerships with good histories won't miss their reps. Try the sniff test. Try the sniff test. The quickest way to sniff out whether a car is flood damaged is to sniff it. Feel your way around. From outside and inside. Not just the inside, but from the outside of it. Quick tip, put the seatbelts all the way out so you get discoloration from water stains further down the straps. Spot corrosion clues. Meaning it's also rust. Faulty fabrics. Don't forget to compare the floor cover upholstery on the doors and the roof to be sure they all appear to be in the same age and color. Take a test drive. If it's too good to be true, do the stereo components look too new for the age of the car? Water damage ruins stereo sound. So do stereo sounds, and not good explanation maybe a sign that the car has been flooded. Check the oil and look for soggy signs, dirty details, and rely on expert eyes, the mechanics. And it's not worth buying because, like Lisa said, the parts may be viable. And it what we showed you, what I probably showed you, no, you saw my reaction from about cars are then sold and rebought because of the damage. They left one person paralyzed. We'll have that story for you soon. So here's a common sense alert to all you flood drivers out there. Now we gotta change the alarm here. Basically, if it's a flood car, don't drive it. Scrap it. Just scrap it. Don't sell it to anyone. If the parts are usable, then just take apart the car with the parts. Try and understand here. Let's keep these cars safe and on the road while we drive. Okay, later in the broadcast, racial sensitivity training from Denny's. We're gonna tell you the racial sensitivity training from Denny's after being hit by multiple lawsuits. But come out next. This person was hit by a gasoline truck. Did the driver intentionally? Did an accident hit the person? Steve Daniels had that story. Stay with us. You see them on the road all the time. Those huge tanker trucks hauling gasoline or any other dangerous products. And if you're like most drivers, you get them plenty of room. But more often than not, accidents happen, like the family you're about to meet. They say the driver that hit the car spilled from a device originally designed to protect to increase safety. So was there a plan to do this? Here's Steve Daniels.
There is something special about her. People loved her. She touched a lot of lives. It's just something you don't ever think of.
Yuta Harrell was a young woman with big plans.
She was dreaming about having a family, having her own house.
But her dreams vanished in July of 1998 when she ran a red light and collided with a gasoline tanker.
First thing you think, no, it didn't happen.
Ernie and Ellis Harrell stand at the makeshift roadside memorial where their 32-year-old daughter was killed. The tanker Yuta hit was carrying 9,000 gallons of gasoline, but remarkably, most of that fuel didn't burn. In fact, most of the gasoline in the main tank remained inside. So what caused this deadly fire? Yuta Harrell hit the tanker broadside, colliding with loading lines like these that were filled with fuel. That gas spilled onto her engine, which sent the car up in flames. Ironically, the lines were originally supposed to be a safety device designed to break away on impact and prevent gas in the tank from escaping. They were not supposed to transport gas. And Yuta Harrell's parents believe had those lines been empty, their daughter might have survived. Bob Chipkovich is with the National Transportation Safety Board. He's been examining the issue of wet lines very closely.
When you're talking about gasoline, it's highly flammable and volatile as that is. Pouring over the hood of an automobile, a hot engine, certainly a very, very dangerous condition.
In May of 1998, Chipkovich and the NTSB submitted this extensive report to the Department of Transportation, the government agency with the ultimate authority to rule on wet lines. In its report, the NTSB strongly recommends the DOT prohibit carrying hazardous materials in wet lines.
We don't think that gasoline or any hazardous material should be transported in those wet lines.
But others disagree with the NTSB's recommendation.
I believe that the record over the years has proven that gasoline tank trucks have an exemplary safety record.
For almost 30 years, Cliff Harvison has been the president of a trade association called National Tank Truck Carriers Incorporated. Is it safe to carry gasoline in those wet lines?
I believe it is not only safe, but it is also one of the provisions that has been mandated by Environmental Protection Agency regulations.
In fact, the EPA says it never directly addressed the issue of wet lines, but the agency did change the rules about how fuel can be loaded into tankers. Tankers used to be loaded from the top and unloaded from the bottom, but in 1977, the EPA banned top loading because it was concerned that vapors were escaping into the air. Then truckers began loading their tankers through these bottom lines, sometimes leaving excess gasoline inside the pipes, making them wet lines.
Couldn't the concerns about safety be alleviated entirely if those wet lines were simply drained before the truck went out on the road? Doesn't it seem like a simple solution?
No, it does not. What would you propose? That we simply drive the truck down 25 feet, open up the valves, and spill it out onto the ground? I don't think you want that.
Why not drive it 25 feet and put it into another tank?
What other tank is going to be there?
Harvison insists there's no place to dump the excess gasoline, and he says redesigning trucks presents a new set of problems that could be costly to consumers.
How much is the American public willing to pay in additional charges for their gasoline? How much inconvenience are they willing to put up when thousands of vehicles may not be available for gasoline service on a given day?
Harvison says he'd be open to ideas that could resolve the problem, and after our interview with him, we did find one company that's recently come up with a possible solution. Sunoco decided to install a wet line purging system on some of its tankers operating in the Midwest and Northeast.
It's an insurance policy. We work very hard to make sure that the benefit of this equipment will never be realized. But in the event of a collision, we're very confident that this was the right thing to do.
Cliff Harvison has briefly reviewed the new system, but feels it's too early to say whether this is a viable option. He also points out that accidents involving wet lines are very rare.
With 120 million loads over a 10-year period, probably less than a dozen of these type of accidents have been reported. That is an extraordinary safety record under any degree of circumstance.
While the risk of an accident may be low, the consequences are great.
The Department of Transportation declined our request for an interview, but in a written response, the agency said it's conducting an assessment of technologies that could minimize or eliminate risks associated with wet lines. But the Harrells, still mourning the loss of their daughter, want the government to prohibit wet lines on all gas tankers, because they believe every day on virtually every major roadway in America, tankers with wet lines pose a serious danger to other drivers.
We can't bring Utah back, but we can do something. All of us can do something to prevent it from happening again.
By the way, Sunoco, the company that's installing the new purging system on some of its tankers, says none of those costs will be passed on to consumers.
Okay. Common sense alert. Like the person said, how much are you willing to pay? I'm willing to pay whatever the taxpayer is paying. This is coming out of our tax dollars. We pay taxes, and some of the tax money goes to buildings. I mean, we stand on taxpayer property from what we stand on. I mean, you stand at a restaurant, this is taxpayer property. So you can do whatever you want, and nobody can touch the hell out of you. That's called taxpayer property. It's a safety issue for when someone hits it. I mean, we should just get rid of the oil. But I was like, no, I can't do that. You've got to. Those things that they talked about, great idea. A really amazing idea here. Really awesome idea. Coming up next, this person was blind, but he wanted to play football. So why would he play football when he was blind? Ann Thompson has his story. Stay with us. Now for some updates on stories that we're following. Let's look at Michigan now. If you remember, we first talked about Ethan Crumlin when he shot up Oxford High back in November 2021. We talked about his parents and we talked about him. Now the new update from CNN: Michigan high school shooters showing sporadic disturbed behavior in a county jail from the prosecutor. Michigan school shooter Ethan Crumlin has recently exhibited sporadic disturbed behavior in jail, prosecutors have said. In a court filing Thursday, Oakland County prosecutors disclosed incidents of the recent behavior. The filing states that the court required to consider the behavior and Crumlin's ability to participate in the future hearing, saying these incidents relate to the defendant's competence. A prosecutor called the behavior concerning Friday morning at a routine hearing evaluating Crumlin's detention in an adult detention facility as a minor. The prosecutor and the Crumlin's defense team told the judge they believe the teen is competent to participate in his upcoming Miller hearing and sentencing. The attorneys in the hearing said they were fully prepared to hold Crumlin's Miller hearing scheduled for July 27, during which the prosecutors will present evidence as to why the teen should be sentenced to the harshest punishment in the state: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, just like Nicholas Cruz. His defense team is expected to argue making factors in favor of the prison term for years. So we now know he pleaded guilty. So what does that tell you? No one knows. So the hearing's July 27th. We'll keep you posted on what's been going on. What about Uvalde? Well, just 5 days ago, the shooting survivors Mia Guerra and Chloe Torres were awarded for courage. Showing immense courage and character, two Uvalde school shooting survivors, Maya Guerrillo and Chloe Torres, received 911 Youth Hero Awards in Grapevine. Both children survived the May 24th shooting at Robert Elementary School, where 19 of their classmates and 2 teachers were murdered. So, congrats to the survivors for doing the right thing. We have to call 911. If there's an emergency, what we are taught to do is to call, we were taught to do when we were kids, we are to call 911. And clearly, no one understood that phrase whenever you call 911. It's like, okay, what do I do? No one calls 911. That's what we're taught. When we're home alone, we are taught to call 911. That's basically the whole important key here, is to call 911. Sorry about that. So, if there's any more developments in Uvalde, we'll keep you posted, as well as in Oxford. We, of course, will keep you posted. Okay, this guy was blind, but he really wanted to do something. He really wanted to play football. But how can he do when he was blind? Ann Thompson with a remarkable story of triumph over tragedy, and a man who embraced the courage to play football. That story is coming up next, so stay with us. There's nothing better than the field of dreams. Dreaming about playing high school football, college football, any type of sport. But what if you realized that you were blind? And what if you realized your child was blind and your child said to you, I want to play football. And you try to tell them, but you're blind. How can you play if you can't see? Well, you're about to meet one person who really told his parents that he wanted to play football. But what happened next would leave anybody stunned. A remarkable story of overcoming triumph over tragedy, and a man who's willing to find his own field of dreams. Here's Ann Thompson.
Miriam
and Larry Freeman watched their son Travis play in this stadium. As a baby, he slept in his mother's arms in the stands. At 9, he was the water boy. Now 17 years old, 6 feet tall, 215 pounds, number 63 Travis Freeman, the third string center, for the first time starts for the Red Hounds.
He always wanted to be a Red Hound. There was always a major part of his life was to be a Red Hound, to be on that football field.
A dream of so many boys here, but few ever have to overcome the tremendous obstacle that would be placed in Travis's way. An obstacle so great, no one would have imagined Travis would step onto a football field again. Travis's legacy as a football player would be shaped by something that would make him so different, even he couldn't imagine it. At age 12, having played 2 years in grade school, Travis was getting ready for middle school and another autumn of football, when he came down with a headache one day in June. The pain was so intense, Travis could barely move.
He said, "Mom, I've never had anything to hurt me like this does."
You must have been so scared, as parents.
We tried to find him a doctor that would help us, and that was very difficult to do.
Unable to get proper medical care in Corbin, they took Travis to a Lexington, Kentucky hospital. The diagnosis? Viral meningitis, a serious but generally not deadly infection. Travis was given antibiotics and sent home the next day. But there was a new problem. Now Travis's eye was swollen. A potentially deadly infection had set in. Larry rushed Travis back to the University of Kentucky hospital.
I think when they started, when they took his fever first, it was like maybe 103, and was rising.
103, 104, 105. The infection was spreading fast, causing his whole head to swell.
Larry met me outside the pediatric ward, and he tried to warn me. And in 27 hours, he looked completely different. He didn't even look like Travis.
Dr. Richard Hayden told the Freemans only surgery would save Travis from the very rare sinus infection racing through his body and threatening his sight.
This type of complication is something that is associated with a high incidence of death even in these days and times of good antibiotics.
Doctors had to work fast. As they prepared Travis for surgery, they knew there was a chance Travis would emerge blind. Did you realize his sight was at risk?
Everything happened so fast that we never considered that he was going to lose all of his sight. I was just more concerned about them saving his life.
Anxious hours of waiting. Then doctors emerged. Travis was alive, but he would never see again. And what's the last thing you saw?
I remember laying on the stretcher getting ready to go into the operating room and looking up and seeing my mom crying and just saying, "Mom, don't worry, I'm going to be okay." And then they took me out.
What did you think when they told you Travis was blind?
I was devastated. I basically thought his life was over. It was a very tough pill to swallow.
In fact, it was Travis who seemed most accepting of his fate.
I said, "I know that God's got a plan for my life, and God's let this happen for a reason."
Did you go, "Why has this happened to my son"?
No, he wouldn't let us. When you have a child who accepts something like this, how can you not accept it?
But there were times when it was difficult to do, especially when they first came home to Corbin. And Mary talked to a social worker who told her it would be impossible to raise a blind boy in a small town like Corbin.
She told me that I no longer had a son, that my child had to go to Louisville to the Kentucky School for the Blind and learn how to live in a dark, dark world. And that I might as well face it, that he will never be a part of our lives anymore.
And that was one of the times that Travis cried, because he didn't want to go away. That was one of probably the darkest point that we reached.
Mary and Larry vowed to do whatever they had to keep their family together. So just as they had when he was a toddler, they taught the 12-year-old Travis how to walk again, feed himself, dress himself, all now without his sight.
The toughest thing was learning everything at once. You know, I had all this stuff just thrown at me. Here, Travis, you gotta learn this. Here, Travis, you gotta learn this.
After a year of adjusting, Travis found his way. He learned to use a cane or lean on a friend to lead him. Eating became a matter of thinking of the plate as a cloth, but something was still missing.
I wanted to play football.
But Travis's dream of becoming a Red Hound, of playing under the lights on Friday nights, seemed gone. His parents, sensing their son's frustration, went to the middle school football coach and asked if Travis could have some support role on the team, perhaps be a manager. The coach said no, Travis could not be a manager, but he could play.
The coach was Willard Ferris.
At first, I believe thought I was kidding him.
I said, you know, if the doctors will let him do it, let's do it.
Coach Ferris knew Travis wouldn't be able to pass or catch or even run with the ball. There was only one position he could play.
We chose center because we knew he could snap the ball. See, that's the first thing they do, snap the ball to the quarterback. So not only was he going to be part of the team, he was going to be a main part of the team. I just didn't want to feel like he was just there, a token.
Did it ever cross your mind, how can I play if I can't see?
No, it didn't. You know, I guess I was excited because I thought I was actually going to get to play again.
And that's all that mattered.
And that's what mattered.
The center will be Travis Freeman.
Just over a year after his illness, Travis did something no one had ever heard of a totally blind athlete ever doing before. He played organized football. But Travis wanted more. He wanted to wear the red and white jersey of his heroes, to play on the high school varsity squad, to be a Corbin Red Hound. High school coach Mike Whitaker was willing to give Travis that chance. In his college career, Whitaker, a quarterback, played with a deaf fullback who read lips.
He handled it really well. He was a very good football player.
Did that help prepare you for coaching Travis, do you think?
I think so. I think it allowed me to see that you really, if you just give them the opportunity, a handicapped person can do as much as anyone else.
It's a lesson Travis teaches his teammates by example, not exception. He does the same drills for agility, for footwork, for blocking. During the game, his teammates help him line up and tell Travis whether he needs to block right or left to stop his opponent. Were there days when you thought, look, I can't see, don't make me do this?
No, but I knew from day one that, you know, I didn't want them to treat me like, hey, he's a poor little blind boy, let's just kind of take it easy on him. I didn't want that. And I knew that if I ever asked for that it wouldn't be the same.
It hasn't always been easy for Travis. He's run over his teammates, his coaches, even been lost in the middle of the field. But his coach insists Travis plays a bigger role on the team than he would as a starter.
Other kids feed off of what he does. And like I said before, he's our spiritual leader, and you know, he means a lot to our football program.
And he means the world to his parents, who come early and stay late to see their son. On this night, senior night, it is their turn to take the field with Travis.
We've come a long ways in the last 5 years. And football's been an important part of that for him.
He has accomplished more than he would have been if he had been an all-state player.
He is a third-string center and a straight-A student, and his parents' joy. His mom has saved every photo. And Travis has a scrapbook too. Not the kind most people keep with mementos you can touch and see. Travis's scrapbook is in his mind, filled with pictures he keeps in his heart.
They're my pictures. You know, they're the one thing that I have that I don't have to have someone describe to me what they look like. They're my eyes, basically. They're what I see. They are the visions that I see.
They are his and his alone. And among the pictures in Travis's heart is one of his parents, and in particular, his mother's face, the last thing Travis ever saw.
What do you want to tell him about your face now as you look at him? That it beams with pride. Pride for him, being so proud of him and his accomplishments, and that I love him. It's all my heart.
This turned out not to be the Red Hounds' year. They lost the playoffs, and that ended Travis's high school football career. Next fall, he plans on attending the University of Kentucky, where the head coach has already offered him a position on the team's support staff. And earlier this week, the High School Athletic Hall of Fame presented Travis with the first Travis Freeman Achievement Award in recognition of his extraordinary accomplishment.
And what accomplishments he was. How can a blind person play football? How can he do that? When I first watched this story, I was like, how can he do that when he's blind? I mean, we gotta give blind people the advantage. I mean, we help them out. We have programs. Coming up soon, we're gonna show you a story about dogs who can help out blind people. Guiding eyes. Not guiding light, but guiding eyes. That story's coming up soon. Coming up next, racial sensitivity training. Denny's. You know the one but this time it's not about the food fight. It's not about the health inspector reports. It's about racism. We're going to show you about racial sensitivity training. What you can do if an employee if the employee is being racist towards you. We'll tell you what you can do next. So we'll be right back. Stay with us. Yesterday we talked about sexual harassment in the workplace. Now it's all about racial discrimination in the workplace. Can you imagine this? You're in a restaurant and someone tells you, if you're African American, they tell you, I need you to pay your meal in advance. Or I'm going to seat you at a dirty table. I'm going to seat you in a segregated area. Slavery days are over. We're about to take you to Denny's, to where they have racial sensitivity training. Now, they've been hit with lots of lawsuits. A lot of lawsuits. And by that time, Denny was like, okay. Let's end this. Let's settle this. I don't want to be having more lawsuits. Let's move on. You're about to see that sensitivity training, and you're about to meet the former CEO of Burger King, who came up with a plan. And a quote, this training is going one way. We're going to treat each other with dignity. And if you don't like where the train is going, get off. Here's Leslie Stahl.
Good morning. Good, thank you. Welcome to the Weekend 2 workshop.
Karen Reagan and Andre Clark are training these 17 Denny's managers on how to avoid offending minority customers.
Do not touch them, do not follow them out of the building, do not use profanity or racial slurs, and do not question somebody's immigration status.
They let us sit in on a day-long racial sensitivity seminar that managers at all 1,652 Denny's restaurants must take to make sure they and their staffs treat minority customers like everyone else. One of the racial stereotypes at Denny's was that black customers don't tip. The group was shown this demonstration video.
I'm real sorry, but I do have other customers, and they tip.
I think you better get your manager over here, and I do mean now.
As part of learning how to deal with discrimination, the managers were asked to role-play the situation they just saw in the video. One played the concerned manager, the other the customer who was just insulted by a waitress.
She said, I'm not waiting on you all don't tip. That means she's discriminating against me. She got a problem with black people.
I'm glad you alerted me to this situation, and our policy is no discrimination. We have no tolerance policy.
Well, she need not to be working here. Y'all need to fire her. Something.
And I'll take care of the situation. I'm very sorry, ma'am. This ever happened.
This unprecedented training grew out of two separate class action lawsuits that earned Denny's its reputation about race. The one that got the most attention happened in 1993 when a group of President Clinton's Secret Service agents couldn't get served at the Denny's in Annapolis, Maryland.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Relman.
John Relman, an attorney with the Washington Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, represented the Secret Service agents when they sued Denny's.
In the hour that they were there, the 6 African-American officers could not get served breakfast, while the white officers sitting in the same area of the restaurant, served by the same waitresses, received not only one helping, but seconds and thirds in some cases. They are trusted with the leader of the free world, and Denny's, of all places, will not serve them breakfast.
If you wanted to set up a classic situation to prove whether a business was discriminating, this is what you would set up.
We couldn't have dreamed up a better scenario.
A scenario so good that Relman soon expanded the complaint into a class action suit representing customers in 49 states.
You started hearing from other people, right?
We did. It was an explosion.
One of the things I've heard, tell me if it's true, is that the stereotypes about black customers were so embedded that even black waiters and black managers were in some cases discriminating. Is that true?
Yeah.
Marcus Diggs is a Denny's manager in training.
Young black kids come in, and already their perception is they're not going to leave a tip. They're just not going to leave a tip.
Even a black waiter thinks that.
Right.
Rather than go to trial, Denny's settled the lawsuits in 1994, agreeing to pay $46 million to almost 300,000 customers.
Did every single one of those people suffer discrimination? Probably not. But what the company was saying was, we want to settle this, and we want to put this behind us. We don't want to keep getting hit with lawsuits. We want to move on.
Moving on meant hiring a new CEO. They got Jim Adamson from Burger King, where he had turned that company around financially and was known in the restaurant business as someone who had no tolerance for discrimination.
This train is going one way. We're going to treat each other with dignity. If you don't like the way the train's going, get off.
That's the first thing he told his staff when he joined the troubled company in 1995.
If you discriminate, I'm going to fire you. This
was basically hello.
It was hello.
I'll fire you if you discriminate. Tough.
It needed to be. I set the values in this company, in the culture in this company, and I think it needed to be awakened.
Did you fire people?
We have fired people for discriminating.
There was apparently an attitude at Denny's that blacks were bad for business.
To say blacks are bad for business is almost, I can't even think that thought. So if it was here, it was probably one of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
Dumb, but pervasive. Denny's was almost a breeding ground for racial problems. Open 24 hours, it attracts customers looking for inexpensive meals and expecting top-rate service.
It's a prescription for disaster when you have an untrained workforce that's at this lower end and is suddenly now being put in a situation where you're asking them to serve people.
That's why every one of the 70,000 employees at Denny's must go through the racial sensitivity course, where one of the lessons is that if a customer believes he was discriminated against, the best approach is not to argue, but to apologize.
And when you talk about someone who said, I am being discriminated against in your restaurant, you've got to take the time and make sure everything you do is presenting a message that says, I am very sorry this happened to you in our restaurants, and I just want you to know we don't really go for that at all. And I want to do what I can to make this right for you.
What are the other specifics that they're told in the training?
It's all from, when you see an African-American, this is almost silly to say, but don't put them in the back of the restaurant if there's room, somewhere else where everybody else is seating. Don't sit African-Americans at a dirty table and sit white people at a clean table.
You have to train someone to do that?
Unfortunately.
And you know?
At this Denny's in Waldorf, Maryland, Joan Barner is known as Mom to her customers, who on this day included me and associate producer Michelle Webb. Joan showed us what she learned in sensitivity training about how the simple act of putting a plate down could be misinterpreted.
So you take that plate, and you have to be conscientious, setting that plate directly in front of you, gently. Because if I throw this plate off of balance, and I bounce it off that table, it looks like I just don't want to be bothered. I've tossed my food at you.
See, I would say, oh, she's having a bad day, and why am I putting up with this? And you would say, she doesn't want to serve me because I'm black. And you would say that. I would think that.
Joan even learned that the way you hand change to a customer can offend.
Here's your change. 3 into your hand. That's 4, and that's 5.
And you put it right in my hand.
Right into your hand.
Now, why did you do that?
So that no one takes offense.
that you didn't want to touch them.
And I never knew that. I never knew that just not touching somebody's hand, they might take that as discrimination. I don't want to touch them. In my mind, it was that I didn't want to offend them and rub my germs on them, but that's not what it was.
Troy's job, Joan's job, every job at Denny's is regulated by this 85-page consent decree, a legal document Denny signed when it settled the big class action lawsuits. The consent decree defines every aspect of life at Denny's, how all the restaurants must operate, how customers must be treated. And this sign must be posted at every Denny's restaurant. It says they will not discriminate, and there's an 800 number for customers with grievances to call the Office of the Civil Rights Monitor to complain. The Civil Rights Monitor also organizes secret drop-in spot checking of restaurants.
African American and white testers are sent out undercover randomly to restaurants, and also to restaurants where there's an indication of a problem, to see how people are being treated. And that's unique. That's never been done before. In the first year of the decree, there were 650 tests that were run.
The results of the tests are sealed, but spot checking continues.
It's Big Brother. You have someone surveying them every minute they're on the job. At least they feel that.
Absolutely. And there is that feeling of Big Brother, but what we're trying to do is train them, enlighten them, that not only are they going to be better at serving the customer at the restaurants, they're going to be better in the communities they live.
As part of the training, Denny's managers are shown an ABC primetime live report about a black man who was discriminated against repeatedly.
Watching this video along with, people of other origins and ethnic backgrounds, we have Hispanic, we have Oriental, we also have colored here as well. It's like, man, I feel, it's like, if I try to put myself in their shoes, I would be very, very mad. I would be angry at white people.
How many of you, when Rush used the term color?
Sorry.
Seriously. It's okay. How many of you, when he used the term color, said, ouch?
Right.
It's done.
Yeah.
Now, that's a learning for both sides.
It's interesting that he didn't mention the word Oriental, which is offensive to Asians. Denny's racial problems went beyond clashes at the restaurants. When Ray Hood Phillips was hired after the consent decree to set up a diversity program, she discovered that she was one of the very few blacks in the executive suite.
Black senior managers when you got here, how many?
Denny's one.
Black franchise owners?
There's one African American.
Black advertising firms?
None.
Black law firms?
None.
Black suppliers?
None.
Did you think when you looked at that and you arrived here that this was a racist company?
I wouldn't have wanted to work here.
She searched the country for new hires, and today it's fair to say Denny's has a new complexion.
25% of Denny's senior managers are minority. 20% are African American.
And that's just in 3 years?
That's in 3 years.
There are now many minority board members, suppliers, and franchise owners. And who'd have thought that just 3 years after the Secret Service agents sued Denny's, that the NAACP would be making the CEO of Denny's their Man of the Year?
We're a good company today.
Yeah, but you did have to be forced.
We had to be forced. I wasn't here, but yes, we had to be forced. There's a lot of companies that could be forced to do this. We got forced, but look at where we are today, Leslie.
Where are you?
I would say in the scale, we're in the turning side of this. We are not finished by any means.
We're doing everything humanly possible. There is no company in the United States of America who is more on the point on this issue than Denny's.
Agreed. I agree with everything. Now, the question is, what do you do if you're racially discriminated? By the way, before we go on break, that report for Primetime Live, we are going to show it to you coming up on Monday. The question is, what do you do if should companies have policies saying you should not discriminate customers? We know Denny's. What about other companies? I'll give you my two cents about this coming up. Stay with us. As we have seen, racial discrimination happens everywhere in the workplace, like sexual harassment. But the question is, do other companies need to have... Should other companies not hire people who are going to be discriminated? Well, it all depends. Also, Should companies have discrimination policies? Yes, they do. Every company should have that. And if an employee discriminates a customer, whether he or she's black or white, that person should be fired immediately. There needs to be sensitivity training. It's like the guy said, this train's going one way. We're going to treat each other with dignity. And if you don't like where this train's going, get off. I'm never discriminating people. It's not a joke. Now, if you're a customer or an employee and you've been racially discriminated, what do you do? If you feel like you're racially discriminated, contact your supervisor immediately and let them know that the employee the other employee is I don't know how to say it, but is being racist. He's using racial slurs. He's doing this. He's doing that. He's like saying the N-word and all. That's racist. I mean, saying black customers don't tip. I mean, if a customer feels that, the customer should contact an 800 number. That way it can be more helpful. As for other employees, their workplace rights. Your right to work in an environment free of discrimination. You cannot be denied employment, harassed, demoted, terminated, paid less, or treated less favorably because of your race, color, religion, sex, or sexual orientation, gender, identity, etc. If a customer feels like that he or she's being discriminated, the employee should contact the customer has the right to ask the employee for their manager immediately. Also, if an employee discriminates, the other employee should contact the supervisor and say, "Hey, my friend is being being racist." That person will be fired immediately. So Denny's does not deserve a common sense alert. I think the common sense has already been raised here. But I'll play the alarm. This train is going one way. We are going to treat each other with dignity. If you do not like where the train's going, get off. If you discriminate, I will fire you. That's common sense. We'll be right back. Stay with us. A few moments ago, we showed you a racial discrimination training. We showed you a sensitivity training for managers at Denny's. Can you ever imagine if your teacher is a racist? We talked about this where a teacher was fired for saying the N-word. Now, what if a teacher... Now think about this. As a student, what would you do if your teacher says the N-word? Would you just let it go? Would you just ignore it? Or would you stand up to your teacher and say, wag a finger and say, "Don't you dare use that word. That is my word. You have no right using that." That's exactly what happened here. Ben Franklin High School student confronts teacher for using a racial slur. Ben Franklin High School student in New Orleans reacted to a teacher using racial epithet in class. And I gotta warn you, the video that you're about to see is clearly inappropriate. It contains profanity and racial slurs. It is not intended for children. Viewer discretion advised. Take a look.
That thinking that racist is shit. How you so little white that you can't understand that nigga is racist for a white man to say to a black man? That's fucking racist. Ian, would you say nigga? Would you never say nigga? No. Cornbrew would never say nigga. Would you say nigga? Would y'all white people say nigga? Fuck no, they wouldn't say nigga. How deep? Well, you know what a commoditized word is? Explain this. That's a word that
used so many times that it doesn't mean it's original.
It's used by black people.
It's used by everyone.
No, you use it. Don't say
The
everyone.
word has become commoditized so that anyone can use it, and it's not a negative connotation.
It's a negative ass connotation. It's a negative ass connotation. For you to say it to me is negative as fuck.
Okay, you hear it in a bunch of songs. Are those people being negative when they use it?
By black men. By
Just a
black
word.
men. By black men. By
What
black
does the
men.
word mean when they
By friend. By black men. White men don't say that shit. Eminem,
Okay.
who's a fucking rapper, he would never say nigga the fucking song is offensive.
And you said if you say a word, it means friend, and if I say a word, that same word, it means something different.
Yes,
that's
but-
not true.
Just the fuck
It's
up.
not. It's not true.
Yes, it is.
It's not. It's not if you want the world to move on. If you want this world to be the way it was 50 years ago, then you're true.
The more you
You're
move
right.
on, because white people aren't saying nigga. If a white man says nigga, it's just not moving on. You say nigga, it's slavery. Nigger, I'm a fucking nigger. I'm a fucking nigger. You want me to say that makes no fucking sense.
Nobody uses that word.
Yes, they do.
Nobody says nigger.
You just say it.
You acting like
Don't fucking
we're having a conversation and you can say the word, but I can't.
You can't say nigger or fucking nigger.
Calling somebody.
The only reason why you're fucking racist is my fucking teacher. Don't say that shit.
I'm not calling you anything.
I don't give a fuck.
No one's calling
you.
anyone
Said it.
everything.
You said it. You said it.
Dude, if we're in a class and I'm teaching you, hey, the word nigger is an old one. Please, it's a word, bro. You cannot go through life and act like, oh,
Fuck you saying that shit.
in effect.
Stop saying nigger and nigga. Point blank fucking period.
You keep saying it.
I can say it.
I said it one time.
You missed your conversation.
This conversation.
We had a whole assembly. We were talking about after school.
And
we had assembly after
said it
school.
25 times.
I can say it. I'm black.
That's enough. I've had enough of this crap. I said this show's not going to tolerate racism, but this is just too worse to say. He's right. Only African Americans can use that word. That is their word. And we as white people do not have the right to say that word. Period. This video common sense alert.
Their premium version really takes things to the next level with in-depth feedback on things like vocabulary.
Common sense alert. African Americans have the right to use that word. That is their word. We as white people do not have the right to say that word. But if I did, and I never would say this, but if I did, if I were to say N-word to a black person, they'd beat the crap out of me. I am not a racist. I would never say the N-word, but if I did, like I said, they'd beat the crap out of me. I mean, it's all in the rap songs. I mean, 50 Cent, Snoop Dogg says it. I'm not going off on them. They're rappers. They're going to sing whatever the hell they want. It's the First Amendment, baby. But there are some things you can't say. You can't say fire in a crowded theater. I mean, God bless the First Amendment, but there are limits to free speech. We have to respect that. So, this common sense right here needs to say to you, as a white person, it is their word, and I have no right using it. Because I would get the crap. They would beat the crap out of me. That's using your noodle. I'm explaining common sense, which your tiny mind doesn't make sense. And this was 6 years ago. So, what's happened now? I hope that teacher got fired. We gotta stop this. It's their word. They got a right to use it. And if someone else wants to use it, I mean, no one else has a right. But if they have a right, who cares? Try to understand. We all need to be created equal. Look at the people who look at the thing that got shut down, the racist bake sale. I mean, it's gotta stop. It needs to stop. Coming up, a hidden camera experiment. Coming up on Monday, a hidden camera experiment about discrimination, racial discrimination. Being hired as a black. You'll just see it. You'll see it tomorrow. I ain't got no words to say. That's giving me a break for this Saturday going to Sunday. We'll see you again for Game Written Monday. For everyone here at YouTube, stop bullying, speak up, concentration not strain. It's your body, your choice. No jaywalking. Have a good night.